welcome to the Coaching Uncovered podcast. My name is Brent Davis and I'm the host of the podcast, and this is my podcast where I get to talk to coaches about coaching. And tonight I have got a tour player who is trying his hand at coaching. I've got Matt Jager on the line tonight. Thanks for coming in and talking to me, Matt.
Yeah, no worries, mate.
I think this will be really cool because I've had essentially all coaches on so far, but I've got someone who's got a bit of a playing background that's moving into coaching. So I think we can dig a bit deeper into some of your stories. So for those that don't know you, can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, of course. So it's been a interesting journey so far, and I've come from based here in Victoria now, and got my family life and all that set up here, and played all my junior golf in Western Australia, and I was a member at Melville Glades growing up, and the Graham Marsh Foundation and WA Golf, played a huge part in my development as a junior, and then just progressed through junior golf to amateur golf to playing for the country at the Eisenhower Cup, and turning pro in 2010, and now we're in 2020, and I've still got my tour card, but I suppose I'm perhaps in a little bit of a transition phase where I've always had the passion and the interest in the game to go down a coaching path, and here we are in 2020, still doing a bit of both. So it's been a cool journey.
Yeah, no, that's good. There's plenty of things there that we can chat about during this podcast, I think. But take me back to the junior days. Who was the pro at the club that got you started into golf and helped you out and coached you back then?
Yeah, well, going all the way back. So my very first coach was a guy named Wade Clatworthy, and he was at this little golf club, about 30 k's south of Perth called Marrie Park, and just a public track 5 minutes from my house, and he was really my first coach, and I stayed with him right through my junior golf until he basically left coaching and went into different area of business, and then Rob Farley was my state coach.
Yep.
Yeah, so he was, my state coach and personal coach from, I suppose, about the age of sort of 14 to 17, that sort of, era, right through. I think my last junior series was in about 2005, 2006. And then from there, I worked with Richie Smith. So, in that phase of representative golf for Western Australia, those guys were probably my biggest influences, I suppose. And I can look back to this day, and then, there's still messages that stay with you from all of those guys. So.
Yeah, that's cool. Just a shout out to Richie if he is tuning in. I do want to get him on the podcast at some stage shortly as well. So keep your eye on your contact email. I'll be hitting you up, Richie, to come and have a chat to me as well. So you had a coach when you were a kid starting out, and then you started getting picked in junior state teams. Did you have a choice to bring your own coach into those programs back then, or was it just you had the state coach and was this essentially who you worked with?
Yeah, look, pretty much. I mean, I was fortunate because Wade and Rob Farley were really good mates, and although Wade was heavily involved in the Graham Marsh Foundation, even though he wasn't the state coach, and because he was mates with Rob, they worked closely together with me, and helped my development so that there wasn't any mixed messages, I suppose. And that's probably one concern sometimes when you do move into those state programs. And I think they've done a good job of it now, getting a little bit more clarity around how all of that looks. But, at that point in time, I was fortunate because although Rob was the state coach, Wade was my personal coach. They were good mates, and they made sure that I was just working on whatever it was that I needed to work on.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That certainly makes sense. And
Yeah.
you probably are correct. The Golf Australia program these days certainly has more home coach involvement than what it had in the past. So they're certainly stepping down that pathway.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
so tell me about the things that changed when you started getting involved with that state programs as a player. So obviously you've come from a junior background where you're probably the same as any kid. You spent played holes and holes and holes and barely spent any time on the practice fairway. And if you did go to the practice fairway, you probably smashed drivers and didn't do any short game or putting work. So tell me about some of the things they brought into your playing skills when you started getting picked in those state squads.
Yeah, I think those state squads for me, I really enjoyed that sort of competitive environment and sort of more um, structured practice. I'd have my individual sessions and I'd go to junior clinics, a couple of times a week, and then we'd throw in a state session once a week, and all of a sudden, you might be going to 3 or 4, training sessions, and um, between playing school sport, and I was into everything until the age of 15 or 16, until rep golf started to come in, and then you kind of have to wave goodbye to footy and tennis and aths and all the other stuff I was doing. But mum and dad were certainly busy, that's for sure. But those state programs, I guess, just brought a little bit more structure. Um, those sessions were structured practice versus just a 1 hour clinic a couple of times a week, and then you're on your own to. I was always dedicated, and I'd spend long hours at the golf club on a weekend. I'd find an excuse to play the old boys comp on a Monday off the front tees and get your handicap down so that you could get into the Riversdale Cup and stuff like that. But
Cheating that way.
Yeah, no, it was all fair.
That's
The
it.
tees are where they are. I didn't set them.
Yep.
So, I'd spend long days at the golf club, play golf early in the morning. Sit down and have a bucket of chips for lunch, and go have a putt and a chip, and wait for the field to cross over at 3 o'clock before you go and play another 9 holes. And before long, it was dark again. So I spent a lot of time at the golf club, and I was pretty committed, but certainly the state practice was more structured.
That's cool. But did you have a big junior program as you were coming through? Did you have a big whole heap of kids? I know when I grew up in the country and we had 20, 30, 40 kids involved at our junior program. So there was always a group of kids to throw $2 into a putting competition. Winner takes all comp. So did you have other kids to compete against at your club, or was it just kind of self practice?
We had, I was pretty fortunate. So at Melville Glades, they've got a great practice facility where they've, and that was, obviously Richie's home base. And for me and a lot of his elite players coming through, one of the reasons they spent a lot of time there was because the practice facilities are good. The range was 270 odd meters long, and a huge Cooch tee box and 2 putting greens, big pitching and chipping green bunkers. And the best thing about the short game area was that you could get really creative with it. And we did have a batch of pretty good juniors, like we won the junior flag in WA, I think 1 or 2 years there. And, there was probably more or less 6 to 10 guys that would, or juniors, would hang out and, chip and putt and can of Coke and a Mars bar sort of thing after school until dark. And it was good fun. They're some of the best times.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty cool. Did any coaching start to come into your own skills back then? So when you were obviously starting to get into state teams and getting access to that type of training, and did you take some of that back to your club and maybe help out some of the younger kids coming through?
Well, it's interesting because I remember a clear message from, when I was really young. I might have been 12, 13, 14, and when I was working with Wade, and he'd get me to do something, and I'd always ask why, and he's like, you don't need to know, you just need to do it, sort of thing, and I just always ask why, and I'd want to understand. And I guess for me, that analytical side of it has always been there, to the point where now I am genuinely interested in coaching and giving back. But it's kind of been there the whole time, And my dad's a teacher. He was a phys ed teacher for 25 odd years before he moved into something else, and coached me in all of my junior sport, whether it were t-ball or basketball or footy and everything. So that coaching side of it has always been there with me as a kid growing up, whether it was from dad or whether it was just in my blood to want to know that sort of stuff. um, and I was probably too involved in my own game when I was a junior to really have the time to give back to anyone else. But certainly, with my few of my best mates are still from that junior program, and myself and Jason Scrivener would spend hours and hours at Meadow Springs and Mandurah and Melville Glades practicing together, and we'd certainly help each other out with drills and videoing each other's swings and all that sort of stuff, for sure.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, a comment you made in that answer there was that you were always keen to know the why behind the changes. Do you think, as a player, that's going to help you? I would think that if you're going to go out on tour as a professional, you're out there by yourself most of the time. Having that basic understanding, or quite what sounds like quite in-depth understanding of your golf swing, can only help you if you're out there by yourself trying to find a solution to a swing problem that's popped up.
Yeah, 100%. And if you um, look at the guys that you see every week on TV, I mean, they're the elite of the elite. They're maybe the 1%. You know, not even 1% of guys that are trying to make it, that have access to the money and the support to have their coach and their trainer and everything like that travel with them every step of the way. So if you're not in a position to, one, be able to afford it, um, two, not everyone needs it, but you know, I suppose you do have to have that element of understanding about what it is that you're doing with your own game. Yeah, and through my own personal experiences with the Australian Institute of Sport, where I had the guidance of Peter Knight and Mark Holland, and that really great team there in that AIS sort of era, was to really own your game and own your structure and everything that you do. Have your support network there ready to go by the time that you turn pro. And for me, everything was ticking along pretty nicely, but I had a big form slump between winning the Aussie Amateur in early 2010 to when I turned pro end of 2010 after the Eisenhower Cup. And all that meant for me at that point in time was that, well, I didn't really own my golf game at that point in time, and I was still relying heavily on the influence of other people. And fast forward to 2018, 2019, where I, arguably had a really good run of form going, where I contended over the Aussie Summer in nearly every event. It felt like, and even today, I sit here really feeling like I understand the blueprint to what is my golf swing, what is my golf game, what makes me tick, what I need to do to, build form and have success. I understand that blueprint now, whereas before I didn't. And you know, I think if you don't really understand your game and have that blueprint, well, then, yeah, you certainly have to rely heavily, and you'd want to have a coach there just about every step of the way, but it's expensive. You might not be able to afford it.
Very true. But again, it's a powerful skill to be able to have that as a player and be able to have that understanding of your swing and how it works. I think is extremely powerful. And as a goal, as a coach myself, I've always wanted to be able to essentially coach my players to be able to apply it themselves when they have to. So I think you're certainly on the right track with there. Now, getting back to that Australian amateur, I've got a bone to pick with you because you when I was the people who have tuned into the podcast earlier on are conscious of the fact that I was coaching in Taiwan in 2008 ish, and then just after I finished up there, a few of my students came down to play in the Australian Amateur, and you happened to come across one of my students in the semi-final and cleaned him up. So I was not impressed when I saw that at that stage. I hadn't come across you at that point, but I just saw that you beat my Taiwanese player, so I had a bone to pick with you. So you played.
I feel really sorry for you.
No, he's a strange cat. I'll get in trouble for getting his the Chinese name wrong, but it's Hong Chen Yao, and his English name is Alan, and he's a really nice guy, but he was one of those kind of guys that had those real funky swings when we first started working with him, and he was hard to coach early on because you didn't quite know what to change in case the whole thing fell apart because it was one
Yeah,
of
absolutely. Yeah. And it's
those strange
interesting
golfers.
because, um, we went on to play the Asian tour together. I'm not sure if he turned pro at the end of 2010 or 20, but I know it was a similar time to me, and we did play on the Asian tour together. We many practice rounds together, and we'd talk about that match, and it was a great match. And I think you say I cleaned him up, but I think I might have beaten him one up, and it was a good match. And I remember Richie was there with me all that week, and I didn't know really anything about those, Taiwanese guys. Other, the work ethic, and you kind of know what they're going to bring. Um, but Richie was like, look, this guy, he swings it a bit different, but he's a really gutsy player, you know, and he was, and he brought the heat early. Um, it was a good match, and I think it was funny because at the same time, Ben Campbell and Bryden McPherson were playing the match in front, and everyone was, the word was kind of getting around that those two were lighting it up, and I think Benny Campbell may have been 11 under and Bryden 10 under, and then you're trying to kind of keep your mind in your own game, and we were playing really good golf as well. But yeah, it's interesting how you compete hard against those guys as an amateur, and then you end up playing the tour together and having practice rounds and just talking about that experience for what it was, and then at the end of it all, you're back to square one as a rookie professional, just trying to cut it out on tour. So it's all good experience.
I always said that if I could put his head on some of the other players' physical swings, I reckon I'd have the superstar golfer because he was a smart golfer, good short game, good chipper, good putter.
Yeah.
Didn't quite have the power that you need to have these
He
days.
had the loopy draw down the middle, down pat.
And that was straighter than it used to be. Trust me, when we first started with him, there was about 20 yards of curve on it. It was a bit scary.
Yeah, funny.
But if you put his brain on some of the other players' swings, you'd have the perfect golfer, I reckon. So, no, that was great fun for personally coaching over there. But so, tell me about the Asian tour. How did you find it over there, and what type of things did you find challenging going out on tour over there?
Yeah, interesting. It's a good question, and one that I've had many chance to answer sort of many times, and because for Aussie golfers, it's one of the more accessible tours, right? So a lot of players either go there. So many guys enter Q school, and only a select few obviously get through, but it is the one tour that most of the guys have a crack at getting onto out of the blocks. And for me, I was fortunate enough to get a bunch of starts through my agent when I turned pro for a few years and had my card there for a few years. And to be honest, I struggled a little bit. I found it really hard to deal with the heat and the humidity. I mean, I sweat like a pig, and I I just found it really difficult. And you got to get used to that routine of wiping your face, wiping your hands, wiping your grips, literally before every shot. And all of a sudden, all of that is new, right? And it kind of something else to deal with. You're there in 35-degree heat in Jakarta, just absolutely sweating bullets, and you want to just hit 5 golf balls and go back and have a cold shower and change clothes before you tee off. And the guys that have grown up with it are sitting there grinding away, not even, you know, sweating at all, like it's completely normal. So they're at the advantage straight out of the blocks, and you have to acclimatize to all that. And the guys that do that well succeed. Obviously, the grass is different. I played growing up in Perth because it's so, the weather majority of the time is so good. The grass is always quality. Like all the practice facilities around Perth, whether it be, WA Golf Club or Karrinyup or Royal Freo or Melville Glades, the grass in the practice areas is mint, and the liars are always mint, and the greens are always relatively firm, bent grass, soft. You can spin it. It's totally different to going up, to playing in Thailand when it's hot and a little bit dry, and you're dealing with grain and imperfections in the grass, and it's a completely different ball game, completely different.
It is.
And some of the guys that do well in Asia actually base themselves in Queensland, kind of because of that. And there's a bit of a pattern there to some of the Queenslanders having success in Asia, I think, for that reason.
Completely agree. I had huge troubles just going from Sandbelt in Victoria to going to Queensland to play Chopo Tour. It just it's so much harder. And that heat, I can tell you all about that. My first tournament with the Taiwanese team was in the Philippines, and it nearly killed me. Me being a big fat guy, I almost died in that first tournament. So I understand exactly where you're coming from. So,
Yeah, it's a
tell me about
different world.
it. Is. So tell me about how you've gone. So you've gone from state-based stuff, played Eisenhower Cup. Just quickly on that, where did you play the Eisenhower Cup?
So
Which country did you go?
we played Eisenhower in Argentina, so in Buenos Aires.
Yeah,
Yes.
I completely hate you because I got to go on one Eisenhower Cup trip as a coach with the Taiwanese team, and I got to go to South Australia, of all places to go.
Oh,
Could have gone anywhere in the world,
yeah,
and I went to South
that's
Australia.
stiff. Yeah, I mean the golf courses are nice, but
I've been there, done that. I was keen to go
correct.
somewhere else, and but yeah, so no, I completely hate you.
Spewing,
So
spewing.
yes, it was pretty ordinary. So you've gone from state-based stuff, Australian-based stuff, where you've got that support team constantly with you, helping out as you need it, out as a tour player, out in a country where you aren't familiar, in condition that you're not comfortable with, without that support team. How did you find that, or did you have a coach out there on tour at any stage, or were you just trying to do it by yourself?
I guess I kind of have gone through patches, and when I was in the first couple of years with Golf Australia in the rookie program, there was a bit of funding there to have a coach come up, and Joycey came up, a few times to events, and he was our Eisenhower Cup coach, and he was my coach there for a few years when I first turned pro. And in more recent years, I've worked really closely with Gary Barter probably for 4 or 5 years now. And Gary's done a few events. He's got obviously a lot of top quality players, and a lot of Aussie Opens and New Zealand Aussie PGAs. Those bigger events, he's usually there. But I think I used to get into a routine where, because say if I was on my own 80% of the time and my coach was there 20% of the time, I think, my routine, I got used to my own routines and being able to do things, when I wanted to do them, how I wanted to do them, and with the people the same guys with practice rounds and things like that. And then I found that sometimes with the coach there, that all changed, and there was a little bit of elevation in the way that the preparation kind of seemed to go to a heightened level, just because the coach was around, and there was more analysis and things like that. And perhaps he'd been on the road for a couple of weeks, and the swing needed some work or something like that, and it didn't always fit. Sometimes I'd prefer to just be on the road for 3 or 4 weeks and come back and do a training block with your coach, and then go again. And I think that model definitely works if you can't afford to have your coach there more than just once or twice or 3 times in a season. I almost think in that space it's not quite worth it. Different if you're doing proper training blocks and preparing properly at home, and then you've got your I think in that space is where the caddy comes into play, where the caddy who's there with you more or less every step of the way kind of becomes your guy a little bit, when you can't afford to have your coach there.
Did you see any players that kind of had that coach there constantly, had that hand holding, so to speak, going on?
I think not really in Asia at all, actually. I'm trying to think of it now. I don't really remember anyone in particular having their coach there all the time in Asia. Seems like in Australia, in all the Australian events, that there's a lot of that, where certainly the guys in the high performance program having their hand held the whole time. And then, I don't know that that's necessarily realistic going forward. I don't know that the plans currently that Golf Australia have in place for any of that stuff. And I'm not going to comment on the program right now because I don't really know it and understand what it looks like. But is that realistic to have, your high performance coach there every single week? And well, no, it's not, because unless you're on the PGA Tour, well, it's not happening really anywhere.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. And my goal always when I've been involved with high performance programs was to push them to do their own thing, and step back from being there constantly all the time. And we had problems with that early on in Taiwan, is they were so used to having the coaches there, telling them to do this and do that. And we discussed this with Scotty a couple of shows ago on the podcast about giving the player control over their own training and giving them a bit more power to do their own thing at the times it suits them. And I think that's important to do. I would always be there for tournaments, but I would be stepping back from the practice fairway. And if the player was keen for some help, they could call me over and we could go through some things. But I didn't want to be a crutch, so to speak. So yeah. I think you want a similar thought pattern to me there.
Yeah, I think, cool. And now with how easy it is to share videos with your coach, through the apps, and to monitor your numbers on TrackMan and things like that, I think your everything's a little bit more measurable in that space, which allows players then, when they are on their own, to manage some of the aspects that they're looking for, from that numbers perspective.
I certainly think that periodization type planning that you're talking about, doing that training section for 3 or 4 weeks with your coach, and then going off to play for 3 or 4 weeks, and just getting the job done out there on the course with the swing that you have that week, being smart enough to be able to set yourself up and plan to play the most effective way with the swing that you have that day. Whereas it's very tempting. It's tempting, as you said, sometimes if your coach is there, if it doesn't feel right, to try and correct it before you go and play.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny, because when you read and listen to, because we've got so much access now through social media, and so many of the tours are getting their, big name players on board to give a little bit more feedback. And I remember listening to a couple of guys. I can think of Adam Scott, Henrik Stenson, and Alex Noren all off the top of my head that have said comments that, you get to the range in the morning and whatever shape is coming out on the range that morning before that round, well, that's the shape that you play with on the golf course. And I suppose that's the epitome of playing with what you've got. And they're not talking about in a week. They're talking about every single day could be something different, because that is the minute details of the game that we play. And that's the mindset of those elite guys and that's how they deal with the A, B, C, D game, whatever it is that week, is that whatever's coming out in the range, that's what you go and play with on the golf course, and you don't try and fight it.
If it's good enough for Adam Scott, it's good enough for me.
yeah, exactly.
Completely agree with that. And I would 100% agree with that. So you played the tour in Asia. Did you get too many starts in any of the real big tours? Did you get a chance to play in the States or any other major tours, or did you just mostly Australia and Asia?
I played the Canadian tour, managed cards on the Australasian tour, Asian tour, and Canadian tour at one time, and basically filled up my schedule through that. And I played PGA Tour China, and the few of the European starts and things like that I've played in have come more or less through the co-sanction events here, whether it be Perth or Vic Open or PGA New Zealand Open when it was co-sanctioned with Nationwide, things like that. Haven't played any PGA Tour events. But certainly there's a lot of travel involved in all of that stuff that I was doing there, and the target was originally to try and work through Asia onto Europe, and then have that opportunity to go from playing Canada or PGA Tour China to progress, obviously, to now Corn Ferry and then to PGA Tour. But didn't quite get there, and spent a lot of time playing my golf now through primarily here in Australia at the moment.
Yeah, well, and those steps just get steeper and steeper as you go along those tours. So to go from Australian tour to Asian tour and then onto those other tours, those steps just get bigger and bigger. So there's certainly no blowback on you as a player that you didn't make it to that PGA Tour, because it isn't easy. That's for sure.
No, exactly right. And I think, now you've really got to commit. And I look at the guys now that are, doing really well here in the States. And this is probably a great message for, the guys that are coming through now, is that I'm pretty much a homebody. Like, I like my time at home. Obviously now I've got a young family of my own, and that's me. That's always who I've been as a person, is I've liked my time here at home. But if you've got PGA Tour in mind, we just look at what Curtis Luck and Brett Coletta and Cam Davis and these guys have done, is that they've gone, what, out of amateur golf, I'm going to the States, and I'm just going to be in the States, and play, whether it be mini tours or really target Corn Ferry, and that really is the best way to make it happen. And your support crew and your life becomes around, in America, trying to make it in America, and they're doing a really good job of that. Whereas if you think that you can kind of do that from home and go, well, I'll just progress, and maybe I was guilty a little bit of that myself, or there'll be a natural progression if I just go from Australia to Asia and then to Europe or to wherever, and it will all just kind of make its way there. But there's so many good players, and you just have to bite the bullet and commit. And if you've got a girlfriend in Australia or family in Australia, and you want to be in the States and kind of balance it all up, well, it's hard work. And I think the guys that have done the best have just gone, what, turning pro, going to the States, I'm going to the PGA Tour, and they're there and they're doing well.
expensive too. If you aren't successful, you can spend a whole lot of money very, very quickly trying to do it that way
Yeah,
too.
you
So,
can, but you know what? It's expensive to, you know, every tour that you play on is expensive.
yeah, very
Yeah.
true. So, tell me about the switch that came. Okay, so you're out there obviously trying to be a tour player,
Yep.
and you've signed up for the PGA's bridging program, which gets you some coaching accreditation in Australia. So, what
Yep.
was the switch that okay, I'm going to step away from playing for a while, and I'm going to do this bridging program.
It's interesting, you know, like in 20 in 2016, um, Steph and I got married in January of 2016, and when we booked all the dates and everything for the wedding, I'd picked like the end week of January, and I'd looked at all the Q schools and everything. And the previous year there was nothing on that week, right? And then I think it was that summer for the first time, all the tours had their final stage of Q school that week or the week after, right? And I was just like, you've got to be kidding me, you know? It's like, trust me, you know, you can't reschedule a wedding.
No,
Like,
you
you know,
can't change that date. That's
no,
set in stone.
not when it's only like 6 weeks out, I promise you. And anyway, I was at a stage and I was kind of battling a bit with my game. And I took it for what it was. And I just thought, you know what? Um, I'm going to get married. I'm going to have a great party. I'm going to enjoy that. I'm not even going to worry about Q schools. And I basically took that whole year off, and I was doing some work at a golf bar in the city and pouring drinks and doing a bit of coaching, you know, for the people that were coming through the door, a few tips here and there. And, you know, no, well, you know, just here, have a beer and stop coming over the top, you know, that sort of stuff. And, you know, from there, I just kind of thought, well, let's do this properly. And I, you know, did a bit of research into the program, and because I have always had that interest, you know, in golf, and I thought I don't want to be on the grind and then decide too late that maybe I want to do this. So I was like, I've got a little bit of time, even if I am playing the Australian tour. Well, that's what the program's there for, you know, to manage it both. And so I started to get into it, and you know, then I've had during the program two little boys, and the assignments have taken a little bit longer than planned, but you know, it's all done, and here we are, and you know, I've managed to get my card back. I went back to Q school after that break and reassessed my game and did a lot of work with Gary Barter, and you know what, he's been huge for me, in that really all he's you know done for me is that he sort of reinvigorated like a passion, you know, within me to um, just be in golf. You know, I enjoy working on my game. I enjoy helping others work on their game, and I didn't love the game for a little while there. Deep down, maybe, but at a surface level, no, because I was grinding. I was finding it tough, and then spending time with him, he just brought so much clarity to my golf game, and you know, I just love it. I live and breathe it. I, you know, I don't know if there's a golf program on YouTube I haven't watched during this lockdown period, and my wife's like, watch something else, but I don't know, I love it, you know, and that's part of the reason why I've stuck the course. I think, you know, a lot of guys that I know grew up playing golf with, if they've had a battle with their game, well, they've stepped away. But for me, you know, I've genuinely loved it and got a passion for it, and I've always wanted to figure it out, you know, and you know, I'm not a world beater now by any stretch of the imagination, but you know, I play and have played some really good golf over the past couple of years, and I've still got my full status. And whenever we get back out to playing on tour, I feel like I can do a good training block and get ready and compete. And for me now, the Aussie summer events like the Aussie Open, the PGA, Vic Open, they're like my majors now, and I'm cool with that. That's where I'm at. I love being with my family. I love being with my two little boys. We got some cool adventures coming up ahead of us. And I've still got that opportunity to, for now, try and win one of those Aussie majors, and that's cool. I'm really comfortable with that.
That is exciting for you, I think, and for those that are out there that don't understand how the bridging program works, it essentially gives Matt vocational qualifications now in Australia, so he becomes a vocational PGA professional as well, so he can coach and do other things as well as. Obviously, he has got his tour card still, so he can still go out and play, as you just said. But he's also got those qualifications to go out and coach or be a club pro if he heads down that path at some stage as well. But I'm curious about some of the things. You've obviously had some exposure to some pretty high-profile coaches in Australia over your journey. You've dropped some pretty big names out of those coaches that have helped you through your career, Joycey and Gary Barter and Richie Smith and some of those names, Peter Knight, Mark Holland. There's some pretty good coaches in that list there. Yeah. What are some of the things that they've given you as a player that you think you can bring across into the coaching world?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I said right at the start, I think that there's little messages across the board, or messages, but moments, specific moments that you remember that with that coach, which was kind of like as a player was, like a light bulb moment, whether it be like a sneaky little grip change by the chipping green, or setting up to a shot like this. I mean, Marco was famous for being able to hit like a little flop bunker shot with a 5-iron at Mooner out of that little pot bunker, right? It's just
absolute freak when it came to that shot.
Oh, ridiculous! And I think more than anything is that you remember those moments and those experiences, and from the people and players that I've managed to learn from, and I suppose for me is that I have always tried to learn from whoever it be I was involved with. Is that you can think back, like I said, to Marco in that bunker, whether it be playing a practice round with Sergio Garcia at the Aussie Masters, or the morning that I turned pro, I chucked my bucket of balls down the range, the Aussie Masters at Vic Golf Club, and then Tiger puts his bucket down next to me and starts hitting balls, and it's like my first morning as a pro. It's like 7 o'clock, wow. And I'm just like, Jesus, this is real. This is happening.
Yeah, scary too.
And I just want to as a coach, I want to, let people in to all of that stuff, and not just tell them something that they've already read in a golf magazine or they've seen on YouTube. Create an experience for your clients. And I think for me, your clients, they buy into the person that you are before they buy into the program that you're trying to deliver. And for me, I suppose that's my key message now as a coach.
So, are you going to target yourself as a coach to be more of that? I can turn you into a tour player type coach, or are you going to aim at more at that average type player, or are you going to be a bit of a combination?
You know what? I don't really know yet where my where my coaching journey is gonna take me. It's completely, it's relatively in its infancy. I've spent a good time at Green Acres Golf Club the last couple of years, really working my craft in that space and really learning, and a lot to go with all of those other experiences I've had as a player with all of my coaches, right? And I know sort of short term, what it looks like, but long term, I don't know yet whether I want to be involved in high performance and things like that. At the same time, there's so many really good PGA pros out there that have crafted a really good living for themselves, by providing a great service, whether it be to the members or their golf club, and you wouldn't even know their names, but they do a quality job, they deliver good programs, good content, and they get around their membership. Um, and at the same time, you think about the high performance and elite coaches that are out there. They're up there in lights more or less because of the player that they've had access to. I suppose with Richie, good golfer and whatnot growing up, and then all of a sudden he's got Minjee Lee and Ollie Goss for a while. They're just killing it, and now Minjee and Minwoo just killing it, and now everyone knows Richie, and a lot of it's down to, sure, you're a great coach, but it's players as well that sort of make you that really elite coach, if you will, or put your name up in lights. But at the same time, there might be a really good coach who's just killing it with his membership, and they love him, and you don't know who he is. And I'm happy with either of that, really, to be honest with you. But at this stage, yeah, it's just in its infancy, and I'm learning, and I'm enjoying the process of learning, and I'll continue to learn and help whoever I can along the way.
I like it a lot. I know personally when I first started coaching, I was very guilty of just teaching the players. I was teaching the stuff that I was taught when I was a player, and obviously didn't get to the standard that you got to as a player. Have you found that that's something that you've done early on in your coaching? You've tended to just regurgitate the stuff that you were told as a player?
Um, Look, I think it's a like a really good point, and I can sort of, remember back to moments now where that was, the case, even with things that I was being taught. And in the long run, that didn't work for me as a player, and um, I'm not going to go down that path of um, doing that with my players. Although you've always got to have your beliefs in in what works, right? You've got to have a belief in a system or a technique versus something, um, because that gives you clarity on what you're teaching. Um, but I think there's certainly tricks of the trade from a tour perspective that you can give people access to, sure. And it's been interesting for me because the more that I do research and learn about the coaching game and the coaching business and the messages that the best coaches out there are giving their players, I've found myself going, man, that's exactly what I was telling Jim down at the golf club the other day, and I didn't even know that he was teaching that. So it kind of gives you, it's like a pat on the back. It's like, man, you're on track here, and
Yeah.
it's just little experiences along the way that know I'm doing a good job.
It's great. I think I'm hearing from you that you've got some ideas, but you're fluid in how you're coaching them, and keen to do some more study and find out some more, follow some other coaches and pick up some more tips and advice, and learn more things, which is always a powerful thing as a golf coach. It sounds really good.
Yeah, yeah. I think you've got to. I mean, you don't have to keep learning. You can stick to your guns and just do what you do for as long as you want to do it. That's cool too. But for me, I think just because I have a passion for it, it makes learning a bit easier. And of all the stuff through the bridging program, I found learning about the coaching side of the game so much easier, or all the assignments about coaching or whatever else. It was easy um, to to do that and work through that because I found it fun. Because I love it. Whether maybe a finance module or something. I was like, oh man, not this again, But so
Oh,
it's
H&S
easy
and
to
stuff
see.
like
Yeah,
that.
that's exactly right. So, risk management. Should I go on tour or should I stay home and work?
Yeah, that's it. It's no, it's a challenging course, but again, it gives you those
Yeah, it's great.
qualifications where you can start to make your choices. Uh, Thank you so much for your time tonight, Matt. I really appreciate it. I've kept you for close to an hour now, but I've got I've got a few questions that I like to ask everybody on the podcast, so I'd like to shoot those at you if you
Yep,
don't mind before I let you go.
yep. Roll on.
So now, because you're a player and a coach, so you can come at this from either angle. I've got no problem with this. You're my first real tour player I've had on the podcast. So, any advice for either players starting out or coaches starting out?
Coaches starting out, be genuine, and that is a massive measure of that is the time that you give somebody. As a player, I'd say self-discover, and learn, and try to understand your game, like we touched on before, about being able to go out there and not have to rely on someone else, because at the end of the day, it's just you hanging on to that club.
No, that makes lots of sense. Any advice for golfers out there? So this is obviously a coaching podcast, but hopefully there's a few golfers signing in as well to hear the shows. So any advice for golfers out there?
Be careful of the trends and the fads that you see on social media and YouTube, and go to your pro with the idea, but understand whether it relates to your game or not, because if it doesn't, you'll end up hating the game,
Makes lots
because
of sense.
you'll be just on the hamster wheel and you won't be able to get off.
Chasing that current trend that's floating around
Yeah.
online can be a trap for golfers out there all over the world. So no, I certainly like that one. Where actually that's the fourth question. The third question is there anything that you would change in your career path up until now? Now you're obviously still very young, and there's plenty of time to make changes. But you discussed a bit about maybe making the jump straight to the States instead of going via Asia. Is there anything that you would change in your career path up until now?
You know what? I remember when I was a kid, Wade Clatworthy, my first coach, he said, "Your grip is brilliant. Don't let anyone ever change it." And
So
I
who
let
changed it?
Marty Joyce changed it, and I wish I never did. I should have listened to Wade. He was right.
So did Joycey strengthen it, or I'm guessing he
It
turned
was
it weaker?
amazing, I mean, it was at a time I was struggling with my accuracy off the tee a little bit. I was trying to find something. I was willing to try everything, but it was strong for me, right-handed golfer, really strong left hand, and cut it.
Okay.
Which, I mean, yeah. Anyway, I wish I never changed my grip. Put it that way. And anyway, I'm back to my normal standard grip, and I'm Wade. If you're listening, I'm sure he's not. He's probably flying a plane somewhere. But I've got.
I'm putting this down now to ask Joycey when I get him on the podcast about changing your grip and see what he comes back with. So I'll give him the chance to answer, but
Yeah.
I am jotting it down there now.
Yeah, please. More than happy.
And I will certainly ask him.
It's all above board.
Okay, so the future of the golf industry, or your future probably more so, I'm curious about where you see yourself in 5 years' time.
Um, wow. Hopefully we're out of lockdown.
Fingers crossed. Been a long time coming.
Look, you know what? in 5 years' time, I'd be absolutely super stoked if in these next couple of years of playing, I give my chance an opportunity to play in a British Open. And that can happen, through success on the Aussie Tour, especially the Aussie Open. So in the 5 years, I'd love to have done that in the next 5 years. And then from there, just built a really steady foundation for, my vocational side of my learning, and my coaching. And given a bit of a whirlwind the last couple of months, my life's going to change a little bit, and I never would have expected it. So who knows, mate? Who knows?
So, where can people find you if they're after you? If they're keen to get some coaching from you or come and have a chat? Are you on social media? Have you got
I am. I'm on social media on Instagram. Please, if you're interested, send us a message, reach out. Happy to have a chat, have a look at swings, whatever. I've got some cool stuff coming up on Slow Coach, which is a new coaching platform out there. That'll be launched soon. And in the short term, I'll be at Cathedral Golf Club, for the
nice
for the sort of foreseeable future, and then post that, I'm not sure, but I'm looking to stay involved with the public and my clients through online and doing some. I mean, it'd be interesting. I'm keen to see what happens with the setup down at Sandringham, and what sort of access PGA members get to be able to do some stuff through there. Don't know too much about it, but there's something in the pipeline, I believe.
Yeah, there's some pretty cool tools going in down there, I think. So
Yeah.
I think that'll be pretty exciting times. So I will put some links to all those things in the show description, so you can click on those and check out Matt on Instagram, and maybe hit him up for a game at Cathedral Lodge if he's working up there. That might be a bit harder to get a game on there, but
well, you got to know someone.
Yeah, that's it. I might be making a phone call myself to come and have a game up there.
Please do. Please do.
But again, Matt, thank you so much for your time tonight. I certainly appreciate it, and we will certainly catch up for a beer, hopefully out of lockdown very soon.
Yeah, brilliant, mate. Thanks very much for your time. It's been good fun.